Hello and welcome back to the Christopher Nolan Retrospective. That's right, we're going through all of Christopher Nolan's movies, starting with Following all the way up to Tenet. This is going to be our episode on Interstellar, his 2014, I believe, 2014 space movie, of course, I think everyone knows about this movie. Christopher Nolan's on another level at this point. I feel like everyone knew what this movie was when it came out, but
this one comes. Sorry. I'm too early asking my questions. Introduce yourself, then I'll ask my question.
I am the Adam Caster Dylan Musk. I'm joined by the friendly neighborhood interrupter.
Yeah, I was hoping you would give me that name because I deserve it. Yeah, that's me.
Doing good, Kirklin?
I am doing great. This is probably my favorite Nolan film, which is hard to even considering literally Dark Knight and all those Batman ones and all the other ones. This is probably my favorite Nolan film, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And then we're also joined by, of course, the clown prince of podcast, Travis Snell. Welcome.
Hello, I am very excited because this week we released a bunch of stuff. You've seen the other Nolan retros, and then also to pimp out this weekend will be DC Fandom. We're doing a bunch of coverage with that. With Kirklin's going to be on there, Ted's going to be on there. We got the network people, and I'm excited. DC games being revealed, DC movies, so come check us out. We'll be live, and and then next week, if it all goes according to plan, the world's back to normal. Tenet will be out. We're not sure when that review will drop because it's on a Wednesday, so it's kind of a weird day. So I imagine sometime in that span of the day, the Wednesday to the weekend, we'll figure out something out. And then New Mutants as well. And then I thought there was something. Oh, there's Bill and Ted's 3. I wouldn't expect a review. That's like a hard maybe, but that's what's kind of coming up. And if you want to find us on Patreon, you could have got all these episodes ad-free and early a few days and some of them weeks ago on Patreon. There's exclusive episodes up there. Soon me and Kirklin and Taylor will do the commentary tracks for the Dark Knight series and BVS, so we got to catch up on that. And there's a wrestling match comes September 12th. We got tons of stuff. And then just around the corner, I know these guys should probably be on the review. We'll be talking about Avengers. I've played the beta, but the full game will be out. So we got the next few. It's been quiet this summer. We've had to find different content, but the next few weeks are going to be pretty big. So I'm excited.
Yeah,
that's my
definitely. I forgot to show this out on the Inception review that we did, but yeah, the 7th episode out of Mana is out on the feeds now. Go check that out. I did that with Sydney from Smart Game Piano. We talked about video games and music, and it was a really fun episode. So go check that one out. As for the Nolan retro, since this is the last episode before Tenet, just to give you a little, I guess, recap. So Following is the first one. We did that one. Then we did Insomnia. And then The Prestige, which I missed, but these guys covered for me. And then after that was, Inception and now Interstellar. And then, of course, the Batman trilogy we've talked about previously. I don't know if that's still on the Spotify feed. You know if that's
I don't think so, because that was in the first 6 months because we did that in the build-up for BBS, right? So that's why, like Dylan's going to say, we don't do the retros for the again. We're going to do a commentary track, something different. But those are a bit harder because they're longer. So we're going to do that. We promised within the year, but we'll just wait because back after these few weeks, content's going to get a little light again. Other than the gaming side, there's good games coming out. But for movies and TV, it's pretty lighter,
So if you do want to listen to those, they're up on YouTube still. And then I think Apple Music keeps that, everything. Is that correct?
No, they even get a kickback too. I think it's a little longer. So YouTube, they're somewhere deep in there in the first 5 years. But
I'm sure if you search Geek First Batman, the movie, I'm sure it'll pop up.
And then I guess probably after Tenet, we do this for all our retros. We haven't talked about, we'll do a rankings or something, right? Because we haven't done that. So that'll be fun. And I can't wait for that. I'm not even sure on my list. There's a few, I have the top ones, but the bottoms, I always switch them back and forth. So
yeah, that'll be fun as well. And then of course, Dunkirk as well is already up on, because we did a review when that came out. I'm excited for the ranking. I still have to watch Prestige as well. I'll catch up on that before we do that, and I'll share my thoughts more on that.
Is that a first watch?
What's that?
Is that a first time watch for you?
I have seen it before, but I remember
first adult eyes.
I was distracted. I was
analytical eyes,
hanging out with someone, you could say, and I wasn't really watching the movie, quote unquote.
Hey, let's go.
So it's familiar, but I gotta watch it again. But speaking of first watches, Interstellar today. This is the first time I've seen this movie. I watched it earlier this week. And it's funny because I feel like this has come up multiple times throughout the years. Is I'll mention Interstellar will come in a conversation. I'll say I haven't seen it, and then Kirklin always is like, "What? You haven't seen it?" And I think that same interaction has happened at least 3 or 4 times.
Probably.
Now I don't even know if you're memeing. I don't know if you're joking.
I have short-term memory, so I probably just totally forget. It's what?
We talk about so much every week that it's hard to keep track of what we've discussed and what we haven't. But I'm really excited to talk about this one because this is once again a Christopher Nolan. All of his movies really do reward those rewatches, like Memento and Inception. Obviously, that whole episode we just asked each other questions about it, but like there's always like more to it. There's dynamic. There's weird stuff going on. There's stuff that he's made up for his movies. So it's always there's always a lot to unpack, and I've only seen it once, so that's fun. And Kirklin, I think you have a bit of a different history because this is your favorite one, as you're saying, your favorite Nolan movie. So
yeah,
I guess overall thoughts. Why is that?
I feel like the biggest reasoning for it is that I've just always been so enamored with like space and like just like the mysteries of what is in there in the cosmos, and just like specifically like black holes, and like just the effect that has on like the whole universe. And like I don't know, this is like the first movie that, at least with like fairly modern CGI, that at least makes it look decent, that I don't know, it's fun to watch, and I feel like they tackle it in a really interesting way. And I feel like it dumbs down a lot of like of these scientific like just subjects that like for the average viewer it's pretty easy to consume, specifically when they get into like the whole time relativity, and like how it just totally shifts the whole idea of like what aging is, because it's all relative to where you are in space. And I feel like they just do that in such a like really good way. This movie, it has a lot of like dramatic themes, and I absolutely just love the cast. I mean, like Anne Hathaway is probably my favorite female actor. Like honestly, like I absolutely love her in everything. Wow. Ocean's 8.
That's bold.
Yeah, I think she's my like. I actually I love that movie, Ocean's 8. I defend it to so many people because I just love Anne Hathaway's performance in it. I think she just plays that role so well. But this isn't an Anne Hathaway appreciation cast. You know,
we'll get to her retro one day. We run out of content. We're gonna start doing actors and actresses. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love her. I think she's so good in this. And then you have Matthew McConaughey, who's just he's a heavy hitter. He does this role so well. He does the emotion stuff really good. He does the captain role really well, and I just think I feel like it's a really good like ensemble of the cast that I love, as well as the science behind it. It's a great subject that I just think is really cool. And Nolan, like in his movies, he plays on the realism factor like really well, but he does take his own twist on it. Obviously, if you've seen The Prestige, there's some stuff in there that's just like, okay, this is kind of like sci-fi realm, where it's not necessarily, you know, like I don't know, like
grounded in reality.
Yeah, but he does a good job at grounding it as best he can. So it's like, oh wow, like this possibly could be a thing. Like, you know, like you don't really, I don't know. It I feel like it dances on the lines of what's real and what's not, and he does that so well. And in this film, I don't know, I feel like some people that might really hate this film because of like the science factors would be like, oh, that's not actually what it's like. But it's just like, I don't know, at the end of the day, it's a movie, and I've always liked what this film is, and I'm really excited to talk about it, especially with someone like Dylan who's never seen it before. Yeah. So I'm excited to hear what you thought of it.
What do you got, Travis?
So I gotta paint the picture here. So let's jump back to 2014.
Here we
go. Nolan is on a roll. Nolan, I've been on quote, he's my favorite director, and I've said this before. He had Batman Begins, Prestige, The Dark Knight, and Inception. That is just like two of those back to back is great, but all four is like, this guy's untouchable. I remember, shout out to Kyle, me and him saw this, the West Side Theater, and I was so amped because I too love Anne Hathaway. McConaughey was on a roll. If you forget, this is right when he won the Oscar, so he was just a powerhouse. If you look at this film, there's seven Academy Award winners. Wow. So I was just so excited to see what Nolan could do getting into space. And Inception's not space, but it's that sci-fi, right? I love a lot of this film. I think for me, it's just the third act kind of falls apart in two ways, as far as that's why I brought up this question on Prestige, where this is definitely a divisive movie, but Prestige, I always say that there's a moment in the film where it's reality and then there's maybe a switch, and some people would always say that took me out of the movie, that switch was, I liked the former version, and that is maybe the way for me, that I've liked this movie more and more every time I've watched it. But there is a switch that happens in this movie where it is this very science, and then it gets in that very sci-fi element, and I don't know if it's ever fully worked for me. And I also just have a lot of character problems that happen at the very end, but other than that, I do like the movie, but it is lower tier Nolan. I think it's maybe my second. We'll have to wait till our ranking, but it's in the bottom three, I'll say that. And I think as far as acting, other than you take out Heath Ledger because he's a beast, I think McConaughey gives the best performance in any of the Nolan movies because he just has so much to do. It's an emotional connection. It's something with a child, which you have in Inception, but those are off the side. This is literally side by side. They're tackling a lot of themes. Sometimes I think they do it really well. And then some themes I feel they put to the wayside. They don't really touch again. Same thing as characters. I love all the space stuff as far as I think this is visually his most stunning one. I know Inception is up there, but just what they do with visuals, and yeah, lots of it is CGI, but that's why I love that when he does use CGI and effects, it really feels like it means something. He does not somebody that just horrors it out there and puts it all over. It's like, I'm going to do everything as practical as possible, but when this is CG, it has to look tight, and stuff like the black hole, that looks super believable. It doesn't even feel like it's movie magic. You get sucked in that world. There's fun twists, great performances, and I think the only other, it's not a knock, but I think the reason why I've seen this Nolan movie the least combined with Insomnia, because Insomnia I just don't have too much to return to. This one is just, I feel like you have to be in a certain mood for. There's some comedy, but it's not the same way Inception. There's tons of jokes until I'd say the third act gets really serious. Batman has that action adventure in it. I'd say and same thing, Dunkirk's that way for me too, that I love Dunkirk, but I don't go back to that much because it's a war film. This is very slowly paced. It's 2 hours and 49 minutes, and I feel sometimes it feels that, but it's still a very good movie to great movie, but I do have some big problems with it. I don't love it as much as other ones, and I understand why it's divisive. But again, it's kind of like, what do I want the recipe for my movie to be? It's what Nolan's doing, and Nolan's weakest attempt, if it's one of his weakest, is far superior than many others. And I love a lot of things in here. I just think I am more on that divisive side, on the less positive. But I still, every time I watch it, I enjoy it more. So that's always a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Yeah. So yeah, my first time watching this movie, really excited, a lot of anticipation. I feel like even in the last couple of years or something, it's like I knew I wanted to watch this movie, but I felt like there was going to be a time when we would do this podcast. And so I was like, I'm going to wait so that I can offer that perspective from the guy who just watched it for the first time a few days ago. And I really like the movie. I don't love it yet. I maybe have some problems with it. I think one thing for me was the pacing. It felt really slow at times, which is absolutely the purpose. It's trying to do that at times, I think. But for me, this felt like a 5-hour long movie, which was a bit much. I wasn't falling asleep, but it feels incredibly long. And I guess that's kind of the point, right? That's this movie's playing with how long, relative time and stuff like that. So you could spin it in that way that makes that a positive. But for me, it did feel like a bit of a slog at particular moments, maybe towards the ending, what Travis was saying. But I really, really like it. Once again, like Inception, I think the world building is top notch. We'll dive into some of the specifics, but I just found this is a future Earth, right? Very grounded and believable in that sense. But I loved his attempts at that, the details he added in as what things would have changed or what would be the problems, or even just I don't want to get too much into it. We'll talk about the world building stuff in a bit, but I thought it was amazing. I think I really do need to watch this again from the perspective that just what I was watching on the audio, there was some dialogue I couldn't really hear what they were saying. So I got to watch it again with subtitles to fully
Matthew
get
McConaughey is one of the most quietest motherfuckers on film. They're so, I'm a Murph. I can hear Murph.
Yeah.
And just quickly, the movie sometimes shifts from being so quiet to so loud in a snap of a finger.
Oh yeah.
I remember seeing this in the theater. It is loud. It is a loud movie, especially when you have kids. It's loud movie.
Yeah, and I don't have the best sound setup with my home theater. I was using the TV speakers, which aren't great, but they usually get the job done. But I did find it really difficult with this movie that I really need to I know that I'll like it more when I watch it again. But as of right now, I'm kind of lukewarm on it. I thought it was fun. I love space, as I've been watching tons of these space movies that come out the last few years. Outer Wilds, one of my favorite games from last year. Tons of stuff in this movie brought me back to that game, which is really cool. I'll talk about those specifics later on. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this movie. I think it's really fun. I'll definitely watch it again at some point, but after one watch, it didn't quite hit me like Memento did when I first watched that. Inception, where I needed to go to the theater the next day to see it again. Interstellar's I'm going to wait a few months. I need some time to sit on this one. But who knows? Maybe that'll change in a few days.
It's funny because what you're just saying, I feel like that's the complete opposite effect I have with Inception. Whereas I watched it, I'm this movie is really good, but I don't know, I'll watch in the future just to fully grasp it. But I'm not in a rush. Whereas for this movie, I had that effect where I'm oh my god, I need to see this movie, and have the knowledge that I have right now going into it. So that's funny that you just mentioned it for this movie, and of course, breaking
Yeah.
the fourth wall. We just did the Inception
I
retro.
think one of the key differences, and this can be like our maybe jumping off point into like I think spoiler wise, what do you guys think spoiler wise? I feel like this isn't quite on Inception tier where everybody's seen it, but I don't know.
Definitely watch it and come back. We all recommend it. Like
Worth
that's
a watch.
that's one thing. Even just the way Nolan and his team shoot movies, I just love the way they look. You know, that's what I mean. Like I love being in
gorgeous.
the worlds that he creates. And the one last thing before we continue, I completely forgot to shout out was Hans Zimmer's score. It is so beautiful, especially there's like that sequence near the end where they are, you know, now we're in the spoilers, but when it's like they're trying to spin, but the music it's great because I had in trivia, but Nolan just told him to just go nuts. Like he's like, what do you want me to do with this? He's like, do whatever you want. And I feel like it is, I don't know if it's his best because I love Dark Knight and I love Inception, but I do feel this is his most different, unique, and I love just like the orchestra feeling. And it does, it fits so perfectly with space because there's times where there is no score, but when that score kicks in, it's loud, but it almost fits with that. And I just love when there's times where they're looking out in outer space and it's just the chords and just like Hans Zimmer. Like I know there's so many good composers out there, but there's just the amount of music he's done. And this I've listened to so much, especially that main track. I don't know what I can't, but I can't remember, but it's just so good. And the music is so damn good. And I've listened to this track so many times.
I 100% agree with you. I think they do a good balance of like when they're just in space and you have the vacuum of space where there is no noise and then it's kind of ominous. And then it does like you get those subtle like chords come in. And then it like when it actually hits, like especially if it's like a big event happening, it's just like, oh my gosh, like I just feel so sucked into the vacuum of space.
I totally agree with that. I think the sound is amazing. What I was gonna mention there is that I think for me why I'm not like compelled to like, oh, I need to watch this again tomorrow is because I feel like I actually understand it all. Like I feel like I know what the ending is doing, and I think we'll talk about it more because I think there is intentionally some ambiguity there, is like what really happened. But I feel like I have a really good solid concept in my head of what happened. Maybe as we talk and I'll be like, oh, I didn't hear that line of dialogue. Maybe I'll trip myself up as we talk about it. But I feel like I kind of know what's going on, and I feel like the trippiness of it or the mind-blowingness of it was more with the visuals. And it's more like, here's this trippy scene where you're going into a black hole. What does that look like? But that's not like a story thing where I'm like, oh, I don't really understand what's going on there. It's just the more trippy visuals than it was some like really layered story, I guess, is maybe one thing for me and why I feel like I don't need to watch it again right away because I feel like I got that experience pretty well the first time, which is a good thing. I think that the story came across in like a pretty profound way just in one go. But I think that there absolutely is going to be value here to be found on rewatch because that's been the case for me with every other Nolan movie that I've ever seen. So
well, it's funny because we like in every movie, time and like time placement and editing that always comes up, but it's so funny that this one is for the most part a linear story. And I feel so many times you have a scientist or an astronaut sitting there with a book being like, okay, this many hours, like we just spent a bunch of time on the Inception podcast about, so what does this mean, how many hours? I feel like they do lay out that stuff very clearly. And it's so funny that like all the other films, Inception, other than I don't count Batman because those are different, but Inception, Prestige, and or Memento, Insomnia a little bit, but they all play with time. But this is playing with time like in the literal sense of time as it's a real kind of character. It is an Inception, but it is kind of more just because that's what the dream does. But this is literally just tackling what space does in time. And I think they do that well. I like what they lay out. And I don't know where we want to start with this, but that's where I was going to, the end is the beginning of the end. That for me is when we get into the fifth dimension, the Tesseract. That's when I remember talking about having that similar experience. Me and Kyle saw it, and we went to the Tim Hortons next door. And I just remember us both trying to be like, okay, so like he's doing this and he's doing this. And like the same thing of like, we could figure it out. And there's definitely, this is one of those movies that has like 15 ending explain like videos and whatnot. So if you really don't understand, you can find it. But for me, it was just that it was we were trying to keep this based in science, and obviously he still based it as much as possible and grounded. But I think for me, when he went into this like literal library of his life, that took me out of it. And I always like the movie more and more, but always when we get to that point, it still takes me out a little because it just is like, maybe it's just a step too far for me. And hey, maybe that is the case. Maybe there's some fucking library. But I think my other thing is, before we get to anything else, is like lots of the things that aren't explained, and we talk about this Inception as well, that could just be a dream. I guess this one bugs me a bit more when he does it's they, because we never get to find out about they. The theory is that they is someone from the future, humans that have figured out a way to relay these messages, right? But it just feels like everything that could be be a plot inconsistency. It's like, well, they won me here. Well, they need to do this. It's like they created this library for me. And I think for me, and that's where it's the same way, like Kirklin, you said with Inception, you had the reverse with Dylan, I think, and Jessica, I think, was more that way too with Inception. I feel it's just different strokes for different folks. And I remember that ending I have other things I'll bring up too that are separate, but that for me still I never fully click with it. The whole kind of Tesseract library of time.
Yeah, I mean, since we're just talking about the Tesseract now, might as well keep going with it. For me, I think like the biggest, I don't know, like the reason why I was so positive on taking that, I don't know, turn for it was it kind of like, since there is this library, right, where he has seen his whole life, like I feel like it almost bounces along the lines of like, okay, well, was this made? Like, you know, was it like, it's not just like a random black hole that was produced. Like maybe someone actually made this and it's a library to the unknown, or like a library that's talking specifically his own life. Maybe it'd be different for other people that go into it. And I feel like for me, the reason why I was so positive on it is it's just a really interesting idea on it, and how they're always talking about they and them, and eventually like when they're first going through the black hole, and Anne Hathaway's character kind of like does that handshake, right, and it's kind of revealed who that is later on. And I just always like the idea of being like, our gods, or who we perceive as gods, it's just us eventually down the line. And especially this movie, it tackles the whole time thing so uniquely, where maybe that is just a version of us that has made that black hole, and it's just so hard for us to perceive that, because time is just, it works in such a mysterious way, and it's such an unknown in our day-to-day lives that we wake up at 6 a.m, go to work, you've done that time. So for us, like, our time is just so structured, where I felt like this movie just kind of shifted my whole idea on what we perceive as time. I'm not a big physics guy or anything like that, but I just thought this was really intriguing to me. Again, it's very sci-fi when he goes into a black hole. I feel like we don't 100% know what happens when you go into a black hole, but I feel like you just get spaghettified, right?
Spaghettified.
That's where the fi and the sci-fi comes up.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's fine and well, not fine, but that's why I really like that particular part, because that is Nolan going to the fiction element and what you want to create with that. And this kind of orb at the middle of this black hole. I thought that was really interesting, really compelling. And I mean, part of it was just that, like, visually, it's such a cool.
It's visually
such a
beautiful,
cool, like,
right?
I don't even want to call it a set piece, but just like some mindscape, I guess. I think it's fantastic, really coolly designed, and to me, like, it all connected at the end in like really satisfactory way. And I didn't feel like I was really questioning it. Like, I think, this ties it all up pretty much.
Yeah, and for those reasons, like regarding the Tesseract and the whole black hole thing, and it's just like, well, that wouldn't happen. Like, I understand why people would be a little, divisive on that subject of the black hole and the Tesseract, and how the story kind of like finished. But like for me, it was just a really fun tale, and it's something I was not expecting, because at the end of the day, we don't really know what's in a black hole, right? Like, we don't know if it does take you to another world. We don't know what it is. Like, there's all these theories and everything, and I just for this movie to show us a black hole, and like, I feel like we had never seen one before, and it was really interesting. I was reading into it, like, the person that like basically came with the idea for the black hole was actually like an astrophysicist, and he did it like math wise on what it would look like. And it's really interesting because this movie came out in 2014, right? And we finally now have a photo of what a black hole is. Like, I think NASA released the photo, whether it was a year or two, and it's pretty much the exact same thing that was shown in this film. Obviously, it's not as like high definition and Christopher Nolan-esque film wise, but like,
IMAX.
It's just I think just me being enamored by space already, as well as black holes and all that stuff, like, to actually see it in person, I think that was just a huge boost for me. And I mentioned it before. I mentioned that, Prestige, Retro, and all these other movies, I am just such a sucker for these plot twists, and like how something at the beginning of the movie, it's probably why Christopher Nolan's my favorite director, but there's like stuff that's shown in the beginning of the movie. In this case, it's Murph's ghost, right? And then it's kind of explained who that is. And again, people might be like, oh, it's kind of cheesy, but I'm a sucker for that shit. So I ate it up, and I absolutely loved it.
Well, that's the thing. Like, for me, when I never say it's like a con against the movie for me, because they have that, and they even set up very early. Michael Caine says you're brought here for a reason by somebody, right? So they set up right away that like it is like realistic sci-fi or like science math and explanation and whatnot, but then they right away throw in like, oh, and there's this fucking thing knocking over books in his daughter's bedroom and they gave him coordinates, right? So it's like, for me, it's never like, oh, they didn't set it up. It's just like it took me out. But I think again, they do that in Prestige, they do that in Memento, even in Interception.
Interception,
the crossover coming 2022. But Inception, he lays little breadcrumbs at the beginning, and then when you watch it back, and that's why I do feel every time I have watched this, I like it more and more. I really enjoy it. So yeah, I think it's all really done well as far as that setup. And you guys already brought up, but yeah, visually, the whole movie is like a visual smorgasbord. The planets they visit, even just them and the astronauts and taking the lift off and everything. It's really good. And it's so funny that I was watching this today. Like when he goes into space, it's very quickly. It's probably because the rest of the movie is so long, but he literally, talks to somebody, has a conversation with Earth, and then it cuts that he's lifting off. But in my mind, I remembered there was this whole not training sequence, but more to it. But I was like, oh no, he's gone. And but like you said, they time Anne Hathaway touching somebody, so he does a good job of laying those breadcrumbs to set you up for what he's going to do.
Yeah. Sorry,
I guess
go ahead.
I'll pose a question here. How does he get back to what's the name? Is it Cooper's ship? It's Cooper's what is the name of
the Endurance?
No, like what they named the orbital thing around Saturn at the end, right? Like they named after Murph. They named it's like I don't think it's this, but it's like Cooper Station. It's something like that.
I think it's Cooper Station. I think it's just that. I couldn't remember the second word. How did he get back there? That's what I'm confused about. I've
heard it two ways, and I don't think it's explained. I've heard it as either they found him, which I find very unrealistic, and the other thing is, this is why I'm sometimes not a fan of this portion. They say that whoever they did this Tesseract, they pushed him back to Earth because it was them getting they're helping him along.
Yeah, I brought it up because I knew that question was going to be pulled up because it's one of those things that's always kind of got your head scratching. But I took it the same way. Like it's, I mean, they used the black hole originally to get to where they're going, right? To get to Gargantua and get to these other planets where they can find another Earth-like planet. So I just took it as he went through this black hole, dealt with the library thing, and then it was just like a portal that took him to a different place in time. And again, it's pretty, that's convenient, but it happens a lot in movies.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was. I was wondering if it was like some sort of black hole teleportation thing, or which makes sense because that's what it does, right? It's like a wormhole somewhere else. Or if it was him getting recovered by someone in a ship, which if that is the solution, then I would think that's like, whoa, that's pretty lucky.
It's like Bender when he gets shot in his face.
Find some tiny little guy in like endless abyss, right?
Just floating around.
And like how did he just not die in that time? Because anyway. So I think that does make more sense.
It's funny because it is a thing. It's talking about time and repetition and whatnot. You look at Scorsese, you look at Tarantino. They all have similar beats in some Explorer. But Inception retrospective, we literally just talked about, okay, how does Cobb end up on this beach for a second time? And it's not really answered, right? It's left up to us. And this is the same thing. How does McConaughey get back? Well, he just gets back, and it's like there's theories about it, but he doesn't answer those. So it's kind of funny. I find these two, and I feel like Tenet is going to be in this family that he's a very his ideas are very broad, but there was always this joke going around too that for a while his main leads looked like him, like Robert Pattinson looks like Christopher Nolan, Leo looks like Christopher Nolan, Memento, it's always the same hairstyle and stuff. So it was always funny. He has these tropes, so it's that is another one of there's times where I'm not saying he's on purpose being oh, I'm not going to explain it, but there's times where I think even if he has the answer, he does. We talk about this Inception too, where he doesn't want to leave it out there. If there could be multiple ways he gets back, but that's not important. I just want to get to the point where he is back, and if we saw how he got back, that might be another half an hour to this movie. Because
well, I think that's it's funny. You could mount that as a plot hole against this movie, or you could say the same thing about Inception, or maybe it happens in his other movies as well. But I think that's just a credit to how strong of a filmmaker he is, where that is a detail that I kind of like being unanswered, where it's something that we can debate and talk about without it breaking the movie. Right? There is we can dream up solutions for what that is, but I think it's good to hold some things back, and that that's why I love Blade Runner so much. Is there's so many questions posed in those movies that they don't seek out to answer so definitively on a page. Oh, the answer is 7. Look at right here. I did the math. I like this ambiguity of it. And I think that's fine. I think that's you guys just posed a great solution to how that would work, and that totally fits in with the puzzle. That's the missing puzzle piece in my mind. Of like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I
works for
can
you.
agree with that. Yeah.
How do we feel? Because the other thing that I think it fits better for me as I rewatch it, but I remember in the first time seeing the theater where I went, and maybe I'll throw this to Dylan first, where they kind of throw the two things as far as that Tesseract, it's they creating it, but also the thing as far as love is the thing that is quantifiable now and kind of spread all out. I remember when Anne Hathaway was giving that speech, because it's a long speech, it's well acted and everything, but I just kind of went, all right, like I kind of know where we're going with this. And then when it comes back to the end, I'm not going to say that's cheesy, but for me, that's still always, it has, again, that one's worked better over time because maybe it's just, I'm just the way life has happened. But it is one of those things where it is a big theme in this, but it does take a big leap to love literally being this thing that can, because to me, they can insinuate that this library is made because he has love for his daughter. So, which I have a question after to bring up about his son, but that will wait to save that.
Nobody likes his son.
Well, I have some problems with that son, but yeah, what do you guys think about like love? Because that's another big theme, which that honestly is not really tackled, I'd say, too much. Like it's in Inception, but in a lesser degree.
Well, I think that's an interesting question. One, because I feel like just the word love is such an ambiguous term anyway, right? It means so many different things in different contexts. Like I'd say that I love this movie and I love my mother, and those like mean completely different things, right? And so I see it more as like they're talking about some sort of like connection between like some sort of quantum connection, right? Like the way that he was connected enough to Anne Hathaway that like that hand would reach out and like grab her or something like that, or connect enough with Murph that he could like push out that book, and that was like something that she would that would go to her timeline. I guess I don't know how to define it super well, but I see where you're coming from, where it can come off a bit cheesy, but I think if you dig a bit deeper, it doesn't. It's not cheesy. It's not like some romantic. It's not. If it was strictly talking about romantic love, I think it'd be very cheesy. But it's definitely not. It means like more than that, and that's just like how she decided to phrase it. I guess.
Yeah, I like when she's kind of talking about it, I feel like that can definitely be taken for a cheesy, I don't know, factor. But at the same time, when you've seen the movie and it's just like you kind of realize what she's sort of foreshadowing, like what's to come, like how that power of love is probably what allowed him to communicate with his daughter. Again, it's like you just said, it's such a ambiguous term and it can be like used in so many different ways. So I don't know. I feel like possibly could have been, I don't know, like that whole, I don't know what the word I'm trying to use, like that, like how else are you gonna have him interacting with his daughter? Like what other word would you use there? Like I'm okay with the explanation for it, but yeah, it was funny. Like this previous watch through, I don't know why it was just like the most cheesy that I had like I've seen this movie probably over 10 times, and like for whatever like reason, like this watch through, I'm like, wow, I've never realized how cheesy that like explanation was, because it's just like they're talking about like, whose planet we're gonna go to, and then she just this breakdown, just like, oh, maybe this love power, the universe, and all that.
Yeah, like because I think it's just because at that point with that character and what we've learned, everything so far is like really science based, right? We're going to this because it's the best option, and I just feel like maybe they just want to peel back the layers of that character. And like I said, I've liked this more over time, where the Tesseract I kind of have my problems with, but this, I think it's because that character we don't, and that's some of my problems with some of the characters in these movies, and we have the Inception, but we don't get enough, or maybe if we don't get enough, maybe they should have just been cut. And I just feel like with her, she doesn't feel like that type of character. We learned that she was in love with a fellow astronaut, but that's just not enough to her for me to buy that she has this whole philosophy. So that I think to me it just sometimes comes out of nowhere. And then she's that character from now on, so maybe just learning that. So maybe it's just the pacing of her having that conversation, because it feels like everyone's science-based, and she's pretty I'm not going to say cold, but she's just more like to the point, mission-based. We see her crack a couple jokes, but even her and Mcconaughey aren't getting like they're jokingly not getting along, right? She's like, I'm not going to be your friend, like we're here to do a job and everything like that. So, and then we just skip to she's having this whole conversation about love, and it just it kind of for me comes out of nowhere a little bit. So maybe that's why that speech comes off as like at the first time a little cheesy. I think now I don't really feel that way, but there has that factor at times.
I unfortunately I feel like I'm in the boat where I'd have to like watch the movie and really decide for myself. I think that's just one of the things with these Nolan movies is like you almost can only contain so much in your brain at a time until I've seen Inception a million times, and it's like, oh, I know every single scene that's going to happen here. So yeah, I don't think I have a satisfactory answer for that, but all I can say is that it didn't bother me when I was watching the movie. It didn't feel cheesy. It didn't feel like some some weird thing.
It's gonna be fun when we do Tenet, because like also we reviewed Dunkirk, and there's like some time trickery in that, but not the same way as other movies.
Yeah.
So like Tenet is gonna be blind leading the blind, because all these retros we've had some years, or like Dylan's like you have Kirklin who really loves this movie. I've seen it multiple times. With Tenet, it's gonna be like, well, I think it's that, and I think it's that, you know. So that's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, just because we brought him up. I was gonna bring up this early, but I want to talk about Tom. So this is one of my problems with this movie overall, as far as I don't like this character. I don't like what they do with the character, and I have problems with Matthew McConaughey at the end of this movie. So I love the stuff when he goes up to space and he gets those videos. Obviously, like the McConaughey crying, that's become a popular gif, right? But it's just because it's such good acting. But I love that scene of he's seeing his children progress through the years and age, and you can see his son looking more downbeat and everything like that. But I think my glaring thing is I don't know why McConaughey, it doesn't feel like he loves his son, because at the beginning of the movie, it feels like he is closer to Murph, but he cares a lot about his son. He's fighting for him at the school. Like, I don't want him to be just a farmer. It seems like there's no reason for them to be distant. And also, when he comes back to Earth, this is just a little mind thing, but even if Tom had passed away, all you need McConaughey is to ask about his daughter. He never once, not once, asks about his son. And that's the same thing we talked about, the wedding ring kind of theory. And you guys haven't a problem with that. That's not mentioned. This is me on the other side, is like, then say that he passed away and you have that checked off. That's why he can't see his son. He doesn't give a fuck about his son when he comes back. He wants to see his daughter. He doesn't ask one thing. And the other thing is, he doesn't, one, I don't buy McConaughey if his son went a little nutso would turn his back on him. But two, he doesn't know any of that went down. He doesn't know the farm went down. He doesn't know that he kind of was like Topher Grace literally had to pull out a tire iron to get ready to fight his son. Like, his son has had some better days. So I just feel like that character, I actually don't think any of that stuff, the whole his son being sick, I just think you could have had Murph finding out this mystery. You could have had showing him losing a son and showing him being more depressed. But the whole don't burn my fields, I got to do this, I hate my sister, we're fighting. For me, none of the Tom stuff really works at all. And to me, it's just the cherry on top that McConaughey doesn't, one line like that, to me, that's what happens when I rewatch.
You mean at the very end of the movie when he's like at the space?
Yes. Yeah. When he's back and they say, oh, your daughter, like she's too old to make a transport, but she wants to specifically see you, which doesn't make sense because her entire family comes with her, but that's another point. So like, she makes this trip fine, but like I said, he doesn't even ask about him. So for me, when I rewatch this movie and there's all these touching moments with his son, I don't buy into them anymore, because for us as the viewer, he didn't, not one mention of it all. And I just think the Tom stuff is really mishandled, which also I was shocked, because I think this is my maybe fifth time watching this. I didn't know the young son was played by Timothy Chalamet.
I didn't know that idher until this time around. I mean, again, he's not that, like, he's more popular now.
Yeah, now
in 2020.
Yeah,
so.
back then we wouldn't have looked Timothy Chalamet, but it's just so funny when it's certain movies when you look back now and it's like this cast is stacked. You know, like same thing in Inception. Like Tom Hardy wasn't Tom Hardy when that movie came out, but now he's Mad Max, he's Bane, he's a megastar. So it's funny in retrospect, you're like, this guy who's supposed to be the next Leonardo DiCaprio, he's just in this minor role. But for me, the Tom stuff overall just doesn't work, and it really takes away from some of the story beats, as far as, especially because he's a pretty like family oriented character as far as Matthew McConaughey and Cooper. Right. So those are my thoughts on Tom.
Yeah, I think for me, like the Cooper Station sequence at the very, very end of the movie is so short that it's like maybe like the minute after he talked to Murph, like maybe that he went and like to find his son or something. But he was, as soon as he was brought up there, he was already like prodded in her direction, right? Because he like was talking to someone and they're like, oh, this is Cooper Station, and then they say it's named after her, and then that she's still alive, and she's like, oh, just over there or whatever. So it feels like that's just very guided. Like he just woke up and immediately was kind of sent that direction to go talk to her. I think that is totally a valid criticism, that he doesn't try to investigate that. But I guess I felt like that his storyline with his son was like pretty bow tied up and ready to go.
I guess I just feel like he didn't even want to ask, just like, how is he? And like I said, I just feel like it's an easy note to kill him off. And like, this is a little thing. I don't know if Dylan feels the same way, but I wish we had a tad more Cooper Station, because I'm just always surprised. I get that he's going to go see Brandt. I get that he doesn't know these people, but it doesn't look, he has grandchildren there. He has, like, they literally set up that his grandchildren are right beside him, and it looks like those people completely ignore him and he completely ignores them, and he just leaves the room. I just think even just for some levity, that would have been fun of like, yeah, I'm your grandpa, and it'd be someone maybe his same age. Like, this is kind of weird. I know they do that with his daughter, but I just feel like it's also weird that he has. I know he doesn't know these people, but still, just it just doesn't feel. There's some of the stuff that doesn't feel earned, and I just think there was a bit more to chew on there as far as him getting back to Earth, but it just feels like a pit stop. Then he's back in space, you know. So
I'm curious if there was more Cooper stuff, but this movie's 2 hours and 50 minutes already, and it just had to get cut. And no, I definitely agree with you though, Travis. Like the whole Tommy stuff has been probably the weakest point of this movie for me personally. I have always hated that character since the first time, which you're supposed to, you know, like that's what like that's what it's meant to be.
Are you supposed to hate him, though?
When Eric Foreman gets smacked by him, you're supposed to hate him.
But he's
like murdering his family. It's like, no, what is this doctor doing here? I don't believe in doctors.
That's true, but I don't think he. Like I feel like I don't think you're supposed to hate him. I feel like you're supposed to pity him and feel really bad for him. But I think the film turns it into hating him because, like I said, when we meet him as a kid, he's not a bad kid, and the reason he gets super
when he was a kid, he's bullying Murph. Like he's just always a dick.
Stuff though. Like I guess you can make that case. You can make that case.
Well, like I feel like at least the way that it's filmed, it's okay. The viewers are going to perceive this guy as a dick. You know, he's going to be just the simple farmer that he's not thinking on the bigger spec, you know, the bigger picture stuff. It's just like I got to just make farm to feed my family, which, you know, like it makes sense, but at the same time, like there's bigger stuff going on. The whole world is gonna die, so it's kind of just I don't know. Like I think the whole Tommy stuff it's done a lot better before Murph leaves because like at least it's I don't know why I said Murph. Cooper, yeah. Like when Cooper is like on
What's his
Earth.
first name again?
Cooper. Yeah, I was.
Let me do an IMDb. I'll do an IMDb search while you're talking.
So Matthew McConaughey's character, like he's actually on Earth. He's actually interacting with his son and like doing and he has time to kind of like spend with his daughter and his son. And I feel like that's done a little bit more like better. You know, it's just like, oh, you know, Tommy, like, you know, grab the spare tire, and he's having like those father-son interactions. But I definitely agree with you though. Like when he goes into space, like his entire priority just switches to Murph. And like it's definitely in my eyes the weakest part of the film, but that's not why I'm watching this movie. I'm not watching for a father-son redemption story, you know, like I'm in it for the space travel stuff. So I feel like it definitely gets swept under the rug for me, but it definitely is a fair criticism, and I am glad that you brought it up because it's definitely something that could have been done a lot better. And then just regarding like him being at Cooper Station at the end and like all of his grandchildren are there, I feel like it's just he literally went through a black hole. He's been through so much shit. He's time traveled for like fucking years, and it's just so much stuff is going on. And like maybe he thinks he's in a dream, you know, maybe he grabs his totem out, does his little spin, sees if he's being incepted right now. But like it just, for me, it worked that the only thing that he wanted to see was his own daughter that he didn't really get to see there, and then let her, you know, like cause like Cooper, like, yeah, these are his grandchildren, but like he hasn't been a part of their lives. Like, what does it matter if he's never actually talked to them, you know, like, or if he doesn't say hello? Because it's just like, who the fuck is this random guy, you know? Okay, he's blood related to me, but like at least for me, that's the way I took it. And I really liked when he just leaves and lets her be with like her actual family that she's been around her whole life. Like for me, I thought that was really well done. And I don't know, it just for me it worked. And then but yeah, the whole Tommy stuff, just a douche. Bad flicks, brother.
So apparently his name is Joseph Cooper, though apparently it's never actually said in the movie.
Joseph? Yeah, I was going to say.
Only ever Cooper is said in the movie.
That's trippy, yeah. That's funny.
So I guess that makes sense. I didn't really realize
That's a fun fact.
They never really say his first name.
Yeah, what I wanted to say quickly about you talking about them at the hospital, everything, I do like the tying of when we meet Dr. Mann, and he talks about like the theory of how when you die, last thing you see is your children's face, and when he is dying, you say, look at your face. And then she doesn't say that, but she just says like, you can go now, my children are here. So it's like that tying back to everything, you know, it's like this big circle. So I like that subtle callback to, maybe it's not so subtle, but I like that it's in there as far as it's something a villainous character put forward. It's a good thought. I love we'll get to him. I love Matt Damon and that character in this movie tons. That's he's like one of my favorite type of villains because has that Thanos thing going on where he's, you know, he has some selfish motives, but he's doing them what he thinks for the right reasons, but he's going about them in an extremely wrong way, and he's just kooky. But I like that whole tie back to my family's here and I got my children, so you can leave now. So I do like that.
I'll just touch on my last thoughts for Tom. I totally understand the like. I don't think he is a incredibly well written character or anything, but I love his placement in this movie from the perspective of I think one of the most interesting parts about the world building aspect to me was this idea that this future Earth people have like rejected science and like
Yeah.
have like really changed in like just these many like cultural ways. And one of
Mhm.
those ways is that like it's almost like you're just like assigned a job or something. It's like the book. I don't know if you guys ever seen The Giver or read The Giver.
Dude,
But like,
totally. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
like you're just like assigned a job, and I feel like that's kind of what Tom came across to me. Where like he was just assigned the task to
Totally.
be a
Yeah.
farmer, and that's something that's like really crucial. And it's not something that is no longer seen as like lesser. I think that's kind of something in our culture, like it's like farming is like lesser, even though it's
Right.
incredibly important and not lesser in any way. But in this culture, it's the way the earth has progressed, like it's an incredibly important job, and so it's like a good thing that they would want him to push him into that field. And so I thought that was interesting how that takes like
I
takes
I
with his
I
character.
liked how it was touched upon when he goes to like the parent teacher conference or
Yeah,
whatever it's called, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. He's gonna be a farmer." And he's like, "Is that it? Like, what about colleges or whatever?" And he's like, "Coop, like we don't need." I don't even think he said Joseph there, Mr.
yeah,
Cooper. Yeah, like
Joseph, we don't need
we,
engineers. We need
yeah, we don't need
farmers. We need
engineers. We
food.
need
Yeah.
farmers, right? Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you, Dylan. I liked how
yeah,
it played upon that, especially like when the teacher's like, "Oh, it's the outdated version, of like, oh, that didn't
The
actually
moon
happen. It was
landing.
just,"
Yeah.
yeah,
and like he's just like, "What the fuck? Like, what school did I put my kids into?" Right? Like,
yeah.
it's really interesting.
It's so cool, and that's why I think it's great that they Murph and Tom are always fighting because they're very opposite in terms of like their aspirations. They're also opposite in like many other ways, and so I think that's really cool that has like this old world mentality, which is like a very progressive mentality in
Yeah.
our
No.
age,
Totally.
kind of like reverse of how we live now. So I think that perspective I found really interesting, and I guess like I didn't I understand like what you guys are saying from the character perspective of why Coop should be like, "Where's my son?" But I feel like from at least like my perspective as a person watching the movie, I felt like I had everything I needed from that character from Tom, and I didn't need like some throwaway line at the end to say that he like died or whatever. Which maybe on my now that you guys have mentioned it, maybe when I watch it again, it'll really bug me. But for the sake of this movie, I felt like, oh, I learned so much about his past, his life, what he did with his days, and like even furthering that idea that him and Murph are like totally opposite in terms of
Yeah.
personality in like all sorts of ways.
What
So
about that line that Murph drops on him? Just the biggest like "f you."
Oh, I know.
He's like, "What is it gonna take for your?" Or what does he say? Like another.
You gonna let one of your kids die again?
Yeah, again.
yeah,
It's just like
Yeah.
Jesse's buried with mother. It's like Jesus Christ,
savage.
Yeah,
this world.
yeah, and that's why, like I said, it's a little comic because at the end they hug it out and it looks like they're gonna figure it out and everything like that. So they don't end on a turmoil relationship, her and Coop,
Right.
or her and Tom. But the other thing I do want to show with the parent-teacher conference, the two things. One, I love when they tell like how are you gonna punish Murph, and he's like, well, she's in a baseball phase and her favorite team's playing, so I think I'm gonna do that. McConaughey, he's just so good at being like that charismatic asshole. But I also love because they insinuate that he didn't want Tom to be a farm, and Tom kind of doesn't want to be a farm because they like many times mentioned that Coop doesn't like farming. He doesn't want to be a farmer. John Lithgow lays it out like you were meant for greater things. He was starting to be an astronaut. They pull away from him. But I love, and this is why I think some of the stuff hurts me at the end. The connection they have is when they're at the baseball game, him and Tom are talking, and he's like, the school tells me you're going to be a farmer. That's great. And he's like, really? I thought you would hate that. He's like, no, you're going to do great. You're going to do such good for this country and blah, blah, blah. Like even though he disagrees with the school, he gets into it. He buys into it just to make his son feel better about it because his son was questioning already, like, you don't like to farm. Why would I want to do it? So that's I think I love the beginning of the relationship because he's really
Yeah.
like, I'm going to sacrifice my self-respect and just say, farming is the way to go. And even though he disagrees with the schooling, it's like, it's still the way things are. So he could make, and he could make things a lot harder and put him on an edge and he doesn't want him to feel, I think, bitter like he does. I feel like Matthew McConaughey's character when we meet him is bitter that he didn't get to do any of this. And he doesn't want his son to feel like that. Obviously his son gets bitter because like his kids start dying and shit like that. So like he couldn't
Yeah.
control that, but at least, they eventually, well, I don't know what happened to Tom, but at least they eventually turned some stuff around for Earth.
Yeah,
So.
I 100% agree with you there because like in the beginning although he doesn't agree with the farming stuff, it's like he wants to make his kid feel good, about like his future. And like I agree with you there where in the beginning of the film it seems like he actually has like a deep, like like a big spot in his heart for his son, you know, and then that kind of tapers off throughout the film. Maybe that's just years of time travel. Maybe it's just because he ends up seeing his daughter in the test rack, which you think that he would see his son in there at some point, you know, if he has a lot of love for her. But
that's the thing. It just feels like it's just Murph, and that's it.
So I do agree with you. I think that is probably the weakest point of this movie for me, at least, was just the whole switch in relationship with his son. Because I don't know. Make this movie 3 hours and he actually has a conversation with his son at some point or something. I don't know, but
10 more minutes.
Release the Nolan cut. Come on.
Here we
go. To go in a kind of down a train of thought that we were just on, the idea of like the Earth kind of in like a post-science kind of world, where obviously this is a very science-heavy movie, but like the general populace is kind of against science. I felt that NASA, like the institution of NASA or whatever you want to call it, was used really interesting in this movie, that they're like this like rogue society that
underground
hide away. Yeah, they're like tunneling in the mountains. And I thought it was just really interesting when they finally goes there, how it's like, really sketchy. It's like these bunch of band of criminals or something that like put a flashlight up to him and are gunning him down and stuff. So I thought that was just really cool. And then I just liked all the story beats like related to NASA as well, that I thought the setup of like them sending out like these 12 different like quote unquote probes, or these people like going to different possibly habitable planets to check them out. And then like they would send back signals and then it'd go verify it. I just thought that whole thing was really interesting. And even like the twist of it where they were kind of like going to screw him over. And that Cooper was just another good pilot that they could have used in this world where there maybe isn't too many to pick from. Right. Actually, big question. So this is something that was just something that was so quiet I couldn't hear what he was saying. The grandfather, Donald, I think his name was, John Lithgow's character, said something about the population. He said, I swear he said the word 6 billion. I don't know if he was talking about that there was 6 billion people that died off, or that there was only 6 billion people left. Like, do you guys remember that particular line?
No, I don't actually. Okay.
Maybe I just completely misheard, but it was something about like the population. Because where do you think the world's at? Like, what do you think has it
probably dying off? You'd think, right?
Yeah, like is it just a fraction of where it was in terms of population? What do you guys think?
Maybe it's just so high that like people are just starving.
It's gotten so high, you think?
It's decreasing now. Like, I feel like it got to a maximum capacity and then people are just starving off, and now it's on the decline and they're like, okay, we can't sustain these levels. We're all gonna die eventually.
Yeah, I think when he leaves, they're at a sustainable level of people are dying, but not in huge masses. Like maybe, I guess in masses, maybe millions, I guess could be mass, but also we're talking about billions, right? I think maybe they could even still be around that 6 billion mark. Maybe they're a little under like a 5.5. But I feel once Murphy and once Tom are adults, people are like in mass dying. Like there's not barely any people, but that's when maybe the population is at like a 3 billion, a 2 billion, stuff like that. I think in the 30, 40 years that Mcconaughey was, I guess he was gone for 51 technically in that time. I think when he left, it was starting to get bad. And then when he was gone, it was really, really bad, you know? So that's kind of the way I take it. And that's, I start with maybe thousands, millions. And then when Murph finally finds out that equation, it's because they make it sound like they don't have much longer till they really run out of sources, right? And people are dying from lungs and whatnot. And then another shout out to Inception. It's funny that the movie starts with an old Murphy, and then we go back to like young Murphy, and we find that out at the end. Same thing with Inception and Saito. We start with old Saito, and then it transitions into that. So again, like another like twofer. And I liked that we've talked about world building a lot in Nolan Retro. That's another, just starting with those documentaries was like a different, like it just felt different when I saw it the first time, like in a good way. It was just like, okay, he was inspired by a documentary, and that's where he took that from. But I thought it was a good setup. And the good thing is we didn't know any of these characters were someone we thought, so it was just some people talking about what had happened and kind of things getting bad. And I loved like the whole setting, like they had the bowls upside down, like again, good, just little setups to what the kind of casualties and where the world is at right now.
Totally. Yeah.
Do you guys have anything to say on like the NASA part of it? I don't know if there's much more to
I
it,
absolutely
really.
love the like the robots that they use, TARS. Geez, what's the other guy's name? Case. There you go. And then
Cars.
No, I loved it. I thought that like the design of them was really unique and cool, especially when they're on the water planet and then
he's rolling around.
Yeah, he goes to pick her up, and I love the humor for it. The humor worked for me like just golden when he's
Yeah.
like, what's your sarcasm level at? It's like,
Yeah.
what does he say? 100%. Dial that down to 90. Or
Yeah.
I think it's truth setting or something like that, and he dials it down, but it's funny.
I liked that as well. I don't know, the look of them for me was like a bit too weird, I think.
Yeah.
Like to me, I was like, this is something ripped out of Spy Kids. Like, what is this? Like, it felt like a little too weird.
Yeah.
It felt a little too goofy for me.
It doesn't seem like it would make the most sense, like, especially if they're like in the future and like use them on these other planets. But I just liked when they kind of started folding, and then especially when you get to see it on the water planet when it's like kind of trekking along. I just thought it was really unique. And yeah.
Kirklin, because I know you're a big space guy, and I recommend this to Dylan too, but have you seen 2001 Space Odyssey?
That's on the list. I gotta watch it
you
because
should.
I've heard,
because like TARS is inspired by HAL from there, and like this movie is like a big love letter to that. And then there's a sequel called to it. It's not as good, but like John Lithgow was in that sequel, and he has the same line in that movie as he does in this movie. So that movie is that's where lots of times like everyone should go check it out. Tarantino and Nolan did like an hour and a half interview together, and it was really good. But there are similar ways that Tarantino. It's funny, like he gets dinged a lot for it, but people don't bring out Nolan. Like Nolan loves doing tributes to other people, and I love that because it's just like art inspiring art. And I recommend 2001 Space Odyssey a lot because it has like that kind of, if you like especially that ending with the trippiness and the Tesseract and stuff, it really leans into that. And
cool.
I recommend it as far as
I'll
we
have to
brought
check it
up
out.
TARS.
That'd be fun.
It's Stanley Kubrick, same guy that did The Shining, everything like that. He's he's pretty talented. He's not too bad.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Anywhere you want to go in particular?
Well, you mentioned this character earlier, but Matt Damon's character.
Yeah, I want to talk about Dr. Mann.
The Martian.
Yeah, exactly. To me, that's the funniest thing about this is that he's just like the polar opposite of the character he was in that movie, where he's like
so brave and saving everyone.
You're cheering for him, and in this movie, he's just a total piece of garbage.
Oh
like,
yeah,
he's the worst guy of all time, possibly.
Oh yeah,
like, that's how bad he is.
Is he worse or is Michael Caine worse?
No, he's worse.
Well, because Michael Caine's sending because I don't know. This is where maybe in Kirklin you've seen more of me, but do the people, the original 12, did it? To me, Matt Damon made it sound like they knew the mission was to go out there and just find other planets. Where this one sounded like they lied to McConaughey. So that's where, if they knew, I'd say Matt Damon. He definitely got bad near the end. But I mean, like he went out there, he had a job. He shouldn't be fucking breaking people's glass and throwing them down a cliff and. Like that one moment when he's climbing and he like uses his back grapple like hit his finger.
He's like, I'm sorry.
That's what I love him. But like, is he worse or is Michael Caine worse for lying to them?
Well, the way I see it is Michael Caine's character. Wish I knew the name of his character right now. Brand is the last name, is it, or is that her first name? I can't remember.
Dr. Brand.
Anyway.
He's Professor Brand, so we don't know first names. Yeah, we don't know first names.
Sacrifices like, let's say these 12 people plus like maybe
one to save 1 million.
And yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. Where he's like, this guy's gonna die probably, but that's a risk worth taking. Whereas Matt Damon's risk is like he's just being selfish. Like he's trying to save himself, and it's gonna potentially screw over the entire plan, which. Maybe this is like
the plan B. Yeah. And it's just like that's the whole plan B is to just take those, fertilized eggs and then like just colonize another planet. Whereas what's his plan? Like he's not getting home.
Wasn't his whole
wants to
thing
get off the planet?
I thought his whole thing was he wanted to get off the planet, but I thought he was gonna go through with plan B because he didn't think
I don't think he cared anymore, dude. I think he was so out of it at that point. He just wanted to get back to Earth.
Maybe. See, I guess because the thing when you say Michael McCain, I don't know why the fuck I'm adding McCain to his name. Michael Caine, when he says that's plan B, they say that no, that was just like fodder. That was always plan A. They have multiple characters say it, so that's why again who knows Matt Damon because he's in a total different headspace when we meet him later on. But I don't think like it's Michael Caine. The idea is he did the the algorithms and whatnot and figured it out, but he figured out that this can't be saved. Obviously Murphy finds that out, he gets the black hole information, but he knows from day one it can't be, so he's telling everyone that's plan B, but I don't think that is plan B. I think it's 100%. So that's where I feel that again Matt Damon might be just screwing everyone over, but I still sometimes think that his goal is still he's talking about like I don't have enough fuel to get to somewhere else where you do, and that's where I think that I don't even know if it would be. I guess they do get back to Earth because Anne Hathaway does say you're going to have to make a choice between a potential future and your children, but I still think it's that way if he's taking them out to go forward. But he honestly, the way he's acting, he could just be trying to get to fucking Earth because he baited them there 100%. Oh, this planet's great. It's a little cold, but we can make a life here.
He's like, think of your children, Cooper.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I can't see you go through this. Like, he's just such a fucking asshole.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, but I'll talk with you. Listen to my voice. He is, but he's such. Oh, I love that type of villain. I wish we saw we get the right amount of that, but I love.
He's really fun.
Yeah, it's a cool character, especially when you meet him. You feel really bad because he wakes out of hypersleep and he's crying.
That scene when he's
arms.
crying with
you're like,
phenomenal.
this guy's been through a lot, and it's just like, is this gonna be McConaughey in a few years if he doesn't get found?
Yeah, when he's kind of like explaining, he's like, tell us about your planet, and then it's like the uplifting like score comes in. It's just like, it's like hopefully our planet, like it's cold,
beautiful terrain.
It's like, but the surface, it's got the oxygen and all these. And he's just like hyping everyone up, and he's just. Especially when it's sketchy when he's like talking about his version of TARS. I forget what his is specifically called. But he's like, oh, I can take a look at you. Oh, no, yeah, don't do that. Don't,
Then later on they go to him and he's broken to shit and everything like that. Yeah.
His baseball bat marks and
he went through some stuff. He went through some stuff.
Bat of all things to just try.
But yeah, that's an interesting topic. Just discussing who's a bigger asshat, is Michael Caine's character, or because Michael Caine, he didn't even tell his own daughter.
No,
that's his
he
daughter,
sent
right?
her to die. Yeah, that's his daughter.
Completely sent her to die, and I mean, he's trying to save his species, right? Whereas Matt Damon's just trying to save himself. Like but then you could also make the case that he gave up. He didn't get the information, but Murph didn't give up. She was still plugged when she got the information. She got the stuff from McConaughey. She also wasn't on her deathbed though, right?
Yeah,
he was old in age, and
he lived a while though. I always forget that when Murph is an adult, he's still kicking, and I was like, I feel like they should have aged him down a little bit when he was with McConaughey, because it looked like he had not aged at all. It was just like one day Murph is 30, because they say, I can't remember how long they're there. I think they say, is it 27 years they end up being there?
23.
23 years. So that was Michael Caine when we met him, and then plus 23 years later, I don't know. He has something good going on.
He would have looked like a raisin. Come on, he wouldn't have looked human. He would have looked like a raisin.
Well, I wonder if that's why, because his hair, they dyed it a little blonde. I wonder if they're trying. I
wanted to see Schmiegel hair, where it's just like a couple strands hanging there. He's just looking like a wrinkly old testicle or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
I don't know if I needed that, but
on that topic though, of just the first time that they go to that planet, and it's like, holy fuck, everything went wrong on that planet. Everything just went to shit. Especially how quickly the one guy dies. I forget his name, Dr.
Wes Bentley, who drowns to death or whatever. Yeah.
Dude, that was so abrupt too. You could have easily just missed that. But what happened to that guy? It's just he's trying to get it in the wave, just takes him away. They eventually get back. They lost the member. They don't have any data, and it's been 23 years. And when that moment happens, and then Coop goes to the videos, and he's seeing Tommy at first. Funny enough, he's getting his Skype calls and just breaking down, and then it does the older version, and then eventually, we buried Grandpa the other day, and then he just says basically, I'm not going to do these anymore, and then it cuts into Murph, and that is such an emotional scene. It still gets me all choked up when I watch it. It's just so intense, and I feel up until that point, the mission just got so fucking real at that point, where it's just holy shit, there's actually you can't go back to the way things are anymore. And it just happened like that. It just happened so quickly. And I feel from the first time I saw this movie, I was holy shit. I was not expecting that. And it was just, I feel from that point on, it changed my whole perspective on deep space travel. Because before in my mind, it was Futurama. Then
this is fun. I want to go to space.
Yeah, exactly. It's just go to Pluto, just chill there. But now it's just, you go deep, man, you're never coming back the same, just the way that time affects everyone differently. And especially when they go back to the gentleman that stayed back to study the black hole, and he's I slept a couple times, but fuck, I just had no idea what, imagine being that guy. How long do you wait? Do you just die there? Or it's just do you both? I mean, he's a way bigger man than Dr. Mann.
Yeah.
No pun intended there, but like, fuck,
Yeah.
like Dr. Mann would have been out of there after 25 minutes. Been like, I'm going home.
And
Sorry.
that guy was up
Think
there
of your
for
kids.
years, right?
23
So
years.
he's just sitting there, like,
23 years
yeah.
alone, just studying a black hole.
Yeah.
He was doing his duty.
I thought he was a really interesting character, actually. I liked his inclusion.
Yeah, me too. And he dies this terrible death to Dr. Mann. Fuck that guy.
I do really like Dr. Mann's death, though, as far as like he just gets arrogant and turns off the radio and everything like that. He doesn't want to listen to him. And I love that, like, we talked about that with Maul and Inception, but I don't know if it's a jump scare. I just say that because Emily jumped, but when Mann dies, he's just in mid-sentence and it just unlocks and it just whips him out and he's just gone. Like, it's sudden. I think that's a good thing with that because it makes it like space is scary. But when we lose that first guy early on, I think that's the classic horror rule. You kill someone early to show these are the stakes, and anyone could go because it happens really quickly. Like, he just gets taken by a wave and he's gone and they have to leave. And like you said, it's a complete waste of time.
That little shot of just him floating in the water, face down. At least he's not like alive. Can you imagine just being like,
well, there's been some people with theories that he's
my helmet off?
See, there's been some people with theories that he's just unconscious. I don't know what the whole theory is. I'll have to find it, but then he could maybe live somehow on this planet. I don't know.
But like, what would you do in that situation? Would you just wander? Or would you
I would see if there's something, and then if there's nothing, then I'm going to jump in the water and drown myself. I'm not just going to sit on the planet and do nothing. Like, I don't know.
Was there because they had to wear their masks. Was there oxygen there? I feel like the easiest way would just be take your mask off.
Yeah, I get, and well, exactly. Then it's over, right? Then that'd be the way. That is another, like, I'm not scared of water, but just that shot. That's why, again, I think visually this is the most stunning movie. Obviously, that is CG. Yeah, I know you hate the beach, but when they look and they see that massive tsunami, when it gets so close, that is an anxiety-ridden scene. Like, how it's just like, get in the ship. Yes, like like it's so close, and she's still like, I have time. It's like, you do not have to. Like, obviously that's why I like Koopy's like, you do not have time. You need to get in here now, Bran. But it's there's so many good things as far as like it just puts the fear in you. So many good set pieces.
And like immediately after that scene, when they're just, again, I love the way that they talk about time in this film. When they get back to the ship and they're talking about like, how did we not know that it was blah blah blah? It's just like that, honestly, like in our time, like that probably, like, she probably died minutes ago, which is crazy to think, right? Like, it was probably years ago before you go into the planet. Just the way that Gargantuan, the giant, like the super black hole, is just affecting time.
Yeah,
it's just so like when she hits that, it's just like she probably died minutes ago. It's just like, holy shit, like everything about this mission is just so abstract to at least me. I'm not a particle physicist, like all these all these different things, but I love that stuff. Yeah, not yet. Thanks for having faith in me.
I think that's one of the strongest things that like a space movie can do more than any other setting for these kinds of movies is just that like existential horror, because it's freaky as it's something that's like not totally conceivable to us, yet it like at least for the case of this movie, like Nolan puts it together so well that that really feel like you really feel that time jump when he gets that. When he gets that, you guys already talked about this, but when he gets that sobbing news of like how long it's been, like I feel like my gut just like fell. Like
seriously. And like even now, like I've seen the movie over 10 times and it still just hits me. Like when she's like, yeah, it's funny enough, like this birthday, it's the same, it's when you left, like you said.
Special one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, holy shit.
Yeah, like those characters back on Earth that you've been following for so long, like they're just gone at that point in time. I guess Michael Caine's still chilling because but the rest of them, like,
the super soldier serum.
I feel like one of the reasons why it hits so hard for me is like I have a lot of family that like lives in Alberta, and I don't get to see them. It's like every few years or something. But like just imagine, like, okay, you see them, and the next thing you know, it's been 23 years. Like I'm 24 years old. Like it's my lifetime. Like it's just so crazy to think,
Well, and that's the thing. Like it's like whether it's the big horror, like well, I guess some people have been to tsunamis and whatnot, but with water, we've been around. We can see that with even when he's losing his oxygen, when man breaks his mask. These are all things that you could picture in your mind. But even that, none of us are having family members age 31, 23 years in the matter of hours. But you could put yourself in that situation of imagine if you went somewhere and you came back and that person was like, same thing myself. If all of a sudden Gwen was my age the next day, you'd feel like you're happy that person's still alive and everything, but you feel like you've lost so much in that. Like you have lost so much, but that's like you talk about, you're never going to get any of that back. And you could, in a scary way, like I said, I don't think any situation like that's going to happen to me anytime soon, but I could picture of like, man, what would I be like if that happened? And you would just be, I just think just a shattered version of yourself, you know. And that's why it's like, obviously, and that's why I do like when he does leave to go get Brand at the end, because like I do understand. I want some conversation with those kind of other family members, but I understand why he wouldn't stay there, because it is he's a man from a different time. That's why I've always liked the Planet of the Apes with the original ones, the sci-fi elements and whatnot. So when he does go to get Bran, it's like, yeah, he should go with her because she's also just super alone, and you know you should go help her out because there's really nothing here for you right now. You know, imagine if like Tommy's watching him like leave, doesn't even say bye. Just like, I'm still here, Dad. I'm still. No, it's okay, Tom.
He's as old as Michael Caine. Michael Caine's still kicking.
Yeah, I did die.
Just on, doesn't she go and like meet her lover, or is that just like not?
She does, but he's dead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because one of the shots is she's at like I think I think
made a little grave for him.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I totally
so he didn't make it, and that's why she kind of has this realization that she's gonna be alone, and it's just her. So that like she's gonna put in the live so they can start to grow, but she's gonna go to sleep until like set it for whenever she has to wake up. So yeah, she would be, you know, single and ready to mingle.
It's just the new Eve, yeah. Just like the mother of all new humans. Humans 2.0.
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact. Kirklin, you were talking about you have some family in Alberta. A lot of this movie was filmed in Alberta. Maybe I should say
really.
I'm guessing that whole
That's really
farm.
Interesting.
I'm
what
guessing
about?
all of the farm section.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. The prairies and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The space part.
Cool. Yeah, space.
Yeah, they went on the Canada side.
Technically, all of the Earth was filmed. I think that's
really cool.
Yeah, it's fun because what was it? Insomnia also filmed in BC.
In BC, yeah.
A big fan of jumping over the border here to film some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other thing I was gonna say? Oh God. Oh, here's the other thing. We kind of went on so many different directions there. Something on Matt Damon's character. So this came out like a year before The Martian. Time-wise, do you think this role got him that movie, or was this like already filmed but before that would have come out?
I think it's just a happy coincidence.
It must have been casted by that time.
It would have been. I'm pretty sure it would have been casted. And if you look too, Jessica Chastain is also in both of them. Funny enough, remember she's also in The Martian. She's one of his crew members, Matt Damon's, and she goes back to Earth, and she's like really like, we got to get him back and everything like that. So she's in there too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
okay,
so it's like a Titanic Inception thing. It's a Martian, parallel universe. So no, I think he was either cast, or I think it was a coincidence, but I feel like it was probably cast with the way it came out. Like he was probably cast in this film, was just done filming, because obviously he doesn't have much of a role, right? That's probably a few weeks of shooting for Matt Damon. There wasn't much, so right. I think he was definitely already done this, and I don't think it was out yet.
Yeah,
I found it funny too, because it's just such like a weird role, like for what Matt Damon normally does, right?
That's
like he's normally
like
the good guy, that you're rooting for him, but here he's just a total asshole.
It's a very like cartoony villain almost. Like it's very kind of over the top, and like how maniacal it is. He's like holding his, doing that thing with his fingers. It's quite. Yeah. It's almost like goofy to an extent.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I kind of like it, because it's just like he's been out there for so long. He's crazy, but I think that was because when they casted this movie, they let out that Matt Damon was in the movie, but they wouldn't say what role he was in, and he did no red carpets, he did no premieres. They're keeping his role really secret. And I think the reason they went with Matt Damon is because like, sure, he's played some assholes like in The Part, he's the villain, but really like for the most part, he has a good persona outside, and he's just usually plays our main protagonist that's a good guy. So I think when you see Matt Damon right away, you go to, okay, he's going to be a good guy.
Hunting.
Yeah, we have to save Will. We got we got to make sure he's okay, but he's not. And you have this guy named Dr. Mann, who Mann is trying to end the potential future. There's like some subtle poking right there of like Mann's trying to stop, if he is trying to not let them repopulate the world. It's just all about himself, right? And there's those arguments of maybe Mann ruined Earth and planet and stuff like that. So that is some more like cartoony stuff, but I think that's why he went with Matt Damon, because he's unsuspecting, and
right,
it works.
I say he's just a total asshole, but I really liked like his dialogue that he had too. It's just like the last thing that you see before your death is like your kids or your family, or like that's just that animal instinct of like you have to survive no matter what, even if it is being selfish, right? Like it just I don't know. I like the dialogue that he had, and I thought he was an interesting villain. He's definitely not the worst villain I've ever seen, and it's interesting to see that type of actor in that role, at least for me, because I just always picture Matt Damon as Good Will Hunting, where it's just like, oh man, this guy is totally rooting for him. It's just such a good feel good character.
Even even when I love the two things that like when they're fighting, the fight is super awkward. It's not action heavy. It looks like it's almost choreographed poorly on purpose because obviously gravity and there's falling. But I love when he's hitting with the mask and Mcconaughey just one point goes, stop it. And they both stop. He's like, if you do this, there's 50% chance you could be killing both of us or killing one or yourself. And he says, 50%, that's better odds I've ever had or I've had, in the longest time. And he keeps doing because it is like, at one point he was alone where it's like, his odds of survival were maybe below 1%, until he sent out that information. So I love that line of like, it's better odds than I've had in a long time. And then he keeps doing it. And then McConaughey has this, and that to me, like I said, I've never been in space. I can't imagine that, but you understand oxygen running out and just that idea of like, just his screams and his noise he's making. It's really good. And then we'd already talked about when he's just creepily talking to him. It's, it's good stuff.
I wanted to shout out, we've talked about a lot of like the set pieces, obviously just space in general, space station stuff. That's always fun. Travis touched on the like giant tsunami planet, which I think is really cool, the ice planet. But I also wanted to shout out like at the beginning of the movie when they're just driving through that cornfield in the truck. It's obviously, it's nothing scene on the level of like going through a black hole. But I thought it was cool, one, because that's like, there is no CGI. Well, maybe the CGI on like that plane that's flying around.
Yeah.
But I really like that because you can tell that Nolan's like, okay, we're going to rent out this farm and we're going to run over all this corn.
I have trivia for that corn. For a cornfield scene, Christopher Nolan sought to grow 500 acres of corn, which he learned was feasible when he produced and wrote Man of Steel. The corn was then sold and actually made a profit.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome.
Yeah. So they grew it just for the movie. There you go.
I really, really like that scene, especially when I feel like it adds some world building. Like when he talks about, I think it's the Indian Air Force or something, is like what the drone was for. And it's just like been one that's just been going haywire. And then he kind of explains like, their Air Force kind of shut down shortly around the time that ours did. And then it just kind of, it's just some more world building regarding the fall of NASA and how they became these like, I don't know, mountain dwellers and all that stuff. Well, I really like too how he transforms like the drone technology into his own. What the fuck are those things called? The tractor machines. I forgot what they're called.
I can't help you there.
Yeah. Sorry, farmers. Sorry, family that lives in Alberta.
Well, and the other thing they hit on again, they hit about the theme of survival because she's younger and she doesn't really understand, but she's like, why are you just going to take it out of the sky? It's doing its own thing. Like it's kind of its own being, right? And then he just says, well, everyone has to fend for themselves.
Getting flashbacks to fallen kingdom bullshit. Well, they're one of me.
Well, yeah, obviously it's not as bad as that, but he says like, wow, he's still salty about it. But he says like, it's just the way life is, right? It's just like you have to adapt to survive. So it's funny later on when he gets that with Matt Damon on the other side, where it's like he's the drone and Matt Damon's the guy like taking out the sky, like, sorry, this is what I gotta do. So again, a little early bits put in there as far as where the story's gonna go.
I have like kind of a little side thing I just wanted to shout out. I mentioned it in kind of my overall thoughts, but obviously the space setting is really fun, and there's a lot of great space movies that I love. Like I love The Martian. I think that's a fantastic movie. But yeah, I think another thing that I really found captivating about this is that it reminded me a lot of Outer Wilds, which is an amazing space game that came out last year that everyone should play. It's pretty cheap. It's like $20-ish. So I think everyone should go check it out. But there's a lot of fun stuff. Like there's in that game, you're just like in this little spaceship and you're just cruising around this little solar system, going to different planets, uncovering secrets and stuff like that. And, in that game, there's like a black hole that is very similar to the one in this movie in that it's like trips out your screen and like kind of has this weird distorted effect on it. It's extra captivating in that game because you're actually controlling the ship that like might get pulled into that black hole at times, and then it pops you out somewhere else. So I thought that was fun. Also in that game, there's a planet that's just completely covered in water, and then there's like these giant tornadoes that whip you around and stuff like that. So that reminded me a lot of the water planet in this. And then lastly, just the idea that like at the center of the black hole, it like opens up into like this whole other world or this whole other thing. It's the same thing in that game. There's one planet that's like this weird, creepy little place, and there's like this tiny core you go into, but as soon as you enter it, it like opens up into like this other huge area. There's like no load screen or load time, anything. It just seamlessly opens into this other place, and you keep going into like these different cores, and it keeps opening up and expanding. It's very wild, very intense, very scary section of the game as well. And so the fact that there's a lot of similarities, like I don't know if these guys have watched Interstellar and were like inspired by any of this stuff, because I think a lot of it's just like kind of more classic space theme things. But I thought that was really fun. That there was a lot of like similarities between those two things. And I don't really have many other notes, so I don't know what you guys got here.
I've hit all my main notes, I think. I'll take a look, but I think I got everything.
Got anything, Kirklin?
No, I have no further notes. Yeah.
Got some trivia.
Yeah,
Dr. Kip Thorne, you can look into him. He's a big scientist and whatnot. Nolan and him had a lot of conversation about this film, but early in pre-production, Dr. Kip Thorne laid down 2 guidelines to strictly follow: never violate established physical laws, and that all the wild speculation would spring from science and not from creative mind of a screenwriter. Christopher Nolan accepted these terms as long as they did not get in the way of making the movie. They did not prevent that did not prevent clashes, though. At one point, Thorne spent 2 weeks talking Nolan out of an idea about traveling faster than light. So there's a few things. And then I think there was another thing too where the doctor had a problem with when they did go to the ice planet. There was clouds, and he said something like with the temperature they had set up that these clouds wouldn't be existing and whatnot. But yeah, this guy, you should look into him. Nolan used him quite a bit.
I'm pretty sure he's the one that did the equation for what the black hole would look like, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He might be. Yeah, he might be. He was. Crap, I had another fact. He was going to cameo in this movie. It never happened, but he wrote a novel that was actually a movie that got based on called Contact that also starred Matthew McConaughey. So this is a guy that's done like lots of things in this field. So he went to him. As I kind of talked about earlier, Hans Zimmer was instructed by Nolan to make this a unique score. He said it's time to reinvent. The endless string orchestras need to go to, the endless string Austranos, how am I saying? Austranatos. I might be spelled that wrong, maybe, but I copy and paste it. So if I spelled it wrong, my trivia place spelled it wrong. It's time to reinvent. The big drums are probably in the bin. Nolan did not provide Zimmer with a script or any plot details for writing like he has in the past. Instead, gave the composer 1 page of text that had more to do with Zimmer's story than the plot of the movie. So kind of different way they did this time. I guess he just, like we said earlier, wanted him to go a little bit nuts. Steven Spielberg was attached to direct this movie in 2006 and hired Jonathan Nolan to write the screenplay. He chose other projects instead. In 2012, after Spielberg's departure, Jonathan Nolan suggested the project to his brother Christopher Nolan. If you want, you can go on IMDb trivia. They have the entire plot laid out, like from start to finish of Steven Spielberg's movie. Very, very different movie, and I don't think it was definitely not. I think as science-based as this one. It was a bit more action-adventure. This movie is definitely, I can't say definitely better because it's just a treatment, right? But just like from what I read, I went, I don't know if this would have been what I want, but you should take a look at it. It's very different.
Was Jonathan Nolan the writer or one of the writers for Insomnia?
I don't know if the top of my head,
I remember
to be honest.
seeing another Nolan name.
He might be. Look it up on IMDb while I'm doing this, because I know he did Dark Knight. I know he's done Prestige and whatnot. So there's probably a good chance because they usually work together. I think honestly, just recently they've stopped working together because Jonathan Nolan's kind of doing his own thing right now. So the method of space travel in this movie was based upon Kip Thorne's work, as previously mentioned. I mentioned that already. So blah blah blah. This is the first film since Insomnia to use the word fuck in a Christopher Nolan movie, which is strange because we talked about that. He doesn't really use that much, but I think he used it in a good place when McConaughey just looks at Dr. Mann, just says, "You were a fucking coward." And I don't think he used it in Dunkirk, and I don't see it in Tenet, so you never know. In order, this is kind of funny. It's kind of similar to the David Bowie thing. In order to get Jessica Chastain for a role, Nolan sent his assistant to Ireland, where she was filming Miss Julie with a script watermark, Christina's name, and then she was not allowed to keep the script after one read. So he really wanted her, sent out an assistant, and she got one read, and that was it. And then finally, kind of tying this to what we talked about with Inception and Nolan and Leo, and working together, Christopher Nolan, Matthew McConaughey said each was different than their perceptions of one another. McConaughey expected Nolan to be a perfectionist, but he learned he was collaborative, has a dry sense of humor, and that he actually likes the imperfections. Well, meanwhile, Nolan believed McConaughey was going to be laid back and really loose, but he found him to be very intense and serious during his work. He also presented him some awards, and he kind of joked that on the off days that McConaughey and his kids were really close and they had fun times, and McConaughey actually built the kids a fort. And he said every day on set that he was just making Nolan look like a poorer and poorer father. So some good times there. So yeah, that's the thing I like. That seems like Nolan builds like a really good relationship with his leads, and I like that, and that's why. that's why I pitched. I can't remember. Oh, we did on the 5-year. If we ever had that Hateful Eight, I'd love to, do the Hateful Eight of Christian Bale and Leo McConaughey. He's just had these good relationship with these lead actors. So
yeah, we had mentioned it on another retrospective, the Inception one, but just like the relationship that him and Leo had, I really like that, how they just collaborated together to just make a better film, which is what the viewers want. So I found it was actually for Memento. It was because Jonathan Nolan did the short story Memento Mori, which I guess Christopher Nolan took it, made a screenplay out of it, and a full film. So yeah, it wasn't Insomnia.
It's funny. I don't think I put it in my trivia notes, but Inception was actually the first just original film Nolan ever did, because Prestige was a book. Obviously, Batman was comic books. Memento was based on that short film. So everything he had done up to that point was always based upon something. And same thing, this is kind of based on something because it was based on this guy's book. So he's, and Dunkirk based on a very, famous war.
Yeah,
right.
Not original.
But Tenet's original. So there we go. We're back into it. So as usual, I'll start off. I give this a 9 out of 10, the same score you gave Inception, Kirklin, because that's where I think it's like that's where I'm excited when I sit down and do my full-on rankings, because I think there's movies that I would watch before it and maybe enjoy more, but I think it's just I do enjoy a lot of this movie. Like I said, I think it's more some of the third act stuff, but I think it's just how big of a scope this film is, the visuals. I'm never bored in a sense. It definitely feels long, but I'm always intrigued by just even what's going on the screen. So 9 out of 10, like I said, I think McConaughey is fantastic in this. He's just gives to me the best performance of Nolan movie. If you're not talking about Heath Ledger's Joker, there's so much raw emotion there, which doesn't happen sometimes in these because the adventure can kind of get in the way. But a 9 out of 10, like I said, Nolan's weakest film is better than half the director's best film. So it's just good. Again, I watched this again. I liked it better than last time, so it kind of has that theme.
Yeah, this one has a solid 10 out of 10 on me. This potentially top 3 movies of all time for me. Definitely top 5, but potentially top 3. I absolutely love this movie. I was mentioning like the weakest points for me is the Tommy stuff, and when I think of this movie, it doesn't even cross my mind. Like it's all the space stuff, all the time stuff. You already mentioned the performances are just absolutely phenomenal. It's funny, something maybe it popped in my mind because I watched Inception and Interstellar like so close together, but it was either you or Dylan mentioned just like when when he makes the decision to leave Earth, and then all of a sudden he's just like on the spaceship getting close to Saturn, like just the time skip stuff. I noticed that a lot more in Inception, and I had watched Inception before watching this, and then I'm like, oh, it's also in Interstellar that I hadn't noticed because maybe I just have those rose-tinted glasses because I just absolutely love this film. But it definitely happens more often than I thought it did, which, I don't know, it doesn't take away from the movie for me, but it's just something that you observe when you watch it, quite a few times. And but yeah, the performances I absolutely love. Matthew McConaughey, heavy hitter for this one, and I'm just such a fanboy for Anne Hathaway. I absolutely love her, and I thought she brought it this film. Something that I think I've mentioned it on one of these retros is just I love the way Nolan is able to just take you on these journeys where it just feels so grand. I feel like this is probably the most grand you can ever have because you're literally going to different galaxies, and the visuals are just so phenomenal. Everything about this film I just absolutely love, and 10 out of 10 for me.
Wow, beautiful. I'll say I'm on Google just looking at different posters. I think a lot of these are fan made, but really recommend it. There's some fun art.
I have a poster. I have like a legit poster that Shay got for me from the theater before she quit, and it's like the Milky Way galaxy. This is Interstellar, vertically, and then it's kind of like
I think I see that one in here somewhere.
And I also remember the theme from the very beginning because I was doing searches. It's just called Stay. So if you want to know specifically which one I was talking about, Stay. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, stuff like that, and it's some good stuff.
Yeah. It's funny. After I watched this movie, and even up until earlier today, I was like, yeah, I really liked it. I'll watch it again at some point, but I don't know when that will be. After having this conversation, like I want to watch it again like tomorrow and just like try to figure out more of these details that I kind of maybe didn't gloss over, but kind of missed on the first go. I think there is so much more to dive in here, and it is, just a visual masterpiece, an audio masterpiece. And I think the story is really interesting, fun characters as well. I don't know if I'm not going to drop the masterpiece card on those ones, but at least for the visuals and the audio, like it just nails that space setting so well, which is a setting that I really like for movies and games and all that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't drop a number, but I'm really big fan of this movie, and maybe I'll get a chance to watch it again before we do the ranking, and then I'll have some maybe more developed thoughts. But as of today, I really like it. I think it's a really fun movie. And that's gonna do it for us here. Next time you'll hear from us in the Nolan sphere, it's gonna be with Tenet, which is isn't that an exciting thought, guys? We were supposed to watch it about a month ago.
Yeah.
Here we are now. It's supposed to come out in a couple weeks here, maybe, hopefully. Hopefully I don't have to watch it in Fortnite. I don't want to do that. But
No. Nolan would never allow it.
He would never allow it. But that is everything for today. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next time. And what won't it be, Travis?
Won't be boring.
Peace.
Boom.